Welcome to The Explainer. We've all seen it happen. You find an amazing online community, and then it just kind of dies. So today, we're going to dig into why so many of these digital spaces that start with so much energy and promise just fizzle out.
Yeah, it's such a familiar story, right? You jump into this super vibrant forum, or maybe a Discord server that's just buzzing with activity. The conversations are amazing, you're making real connections. But then, you pop back in a year later, and it's a total ghost town. All you see is spam, maybe some super shallow posts, or worse, just silence.
But here's the thing. This isn't just random bad luck. It turns out there are these predictable patterns of decay. It's almost like there are social laws of physics that are governing these spaces. So today, we're going to conduct an autopsy. We're going to get in there and uncover the hidden reasons these communities really die.
Okay, so our diagnosis starts with the invisible stuff. The diseases, you could call them. These are the social pathogens that really attack a community's fabric while it's trying to grow. And just to be clear, we're not talking about technical bugs here. We're talking about bugs in our social code.
All right, so the first and maybe the sneakiest pathogen is something called the evaporative cooling effect. Just think about a boiling pot of water for a second. What happens? The most energetic particles, the hottest water molecules, are the first to turn to steam and escape. Well, in a community, your most valuable, energetic members do the same thing when things get too chaotic. They leave. And what's left behind is, well, a cooler, less vibrant community. And this is what kicks off a really vicious cycle. See, as the community gets bigger, all this noise from new users who don't get the culture starts to drown out the good conversations. So what happens? The experts, the core contributors, they get frustrated and they bounce. And that, of course, makes the quality drop even faster. It's a self-reinforcing death spiral, really. A lot of times, this happens because there's this failure to balance two kinds of community structures. On one hand, you've got the plaza. Think of a big public subreddit. It's open, it's kind of chaotic, it scales super fast, but it's also really vulnerable to this kind of decay. And then, on the other hand, you have the warren, like a private, gated Discord server. It's stable, it keeps the quality high, but it's much harder to grow. A ton of communities die when they try to turn their cozy little warren into a giant plaza without putting up the right walls first. Okay, another really critical disease is something called eternal September. This term comes from the early days of the internet, and it's basically what happens when a flood of new members is just so massive that the original members, the old guard, they just can't keep up. They can't teach all the newcomers the unwritten rules, the inside jokes, the culture, and the original identity of the whole community just gets washed away. And what you're left with is what people call a zombie community. I mean, it looks alive on paper, right? The member count is huge, but the soul is gone. All the interactions become super bland, really superficial, because that shared context, the thing that allowed for real connection, has been completely wiped out. So it's not just about these social diseases. A lot of communities also have these fatal flaws that are literally baked right into their structure. It's not just the culture that's failing, it's the actual skeleton of the thing that breaks. And one of the biggest vulnerabilities is something called a low bus factor. Yeah, it's a little morbid, but it's a super effective thought experiment. How many key people would have to get hit by a bus for your entire community to just stop? If that answer is 1, the founder, then you have a really big problem. This kind of dependency really creates two super clear paths to failure. So path number 1, the founder just gets totally overwhelmed. The emotional labor, the admin work, it's too much. They burn out, they withdraw, and engagement just plummets. Or path number 2, they leave abruptly, and that creates this massive power vacuum that nobody is ready to fill, and the whole community just collapses into either chaos or complete paralysis. And this chart, this really shows the mathematical certainty of collapse for so many communities as they grow. I mean, look at it. The amount of content, the number of interactions, that stuff grows exponentially as you add more people. But your ability to actually moderate all that only grows linearly, one person at a time. It's a losing battle. You just can't keep up. So, when that moderation system inevitably fails, it triggers what's basically the broken Windows theory, but for online spaces. Once people see spam, trolling, and just nasty stuff going unpunished, it sends a clear signal. Nobody's in charge here. And that, of course, attracts even more bad actors, which then drives away all the good people who made the community worth being in. Okay, so how can you even tell if your community is sick before it's too late? Well, you have to learn how to check its vital signs.
And that means looking right past the obvious flashy numbers to measure what actually matters for its long-term health.
So you look at this number, 1 million members. That's got to be good, right? Wrong. Well, not necessarily. This number is what we call a vanity metric, and it can be seriously misleading. It tells you absolutely nothing about how alive the community actually is today. The real story, that's always in the health metrics. So instead of just looking at total registered users, you need to look at daily active users. Instead of just new signups, you need to track whether those new users are actually sticking around. Is your community a leaky bucket? And you have to ask, is participation spread out, or is it just like 1 or 2 people doing all the talking? These are the numbers that tell you if your community is actually thriving or if it's just a hollow shell.
Okay, so we've run the diagnostics, we've identified the diseases. So what's the cure? How do you actually build a resilient community? One that gets stronger with stress instead of just breaking.
Well, the first prescription is this. Stop thinking of your community as one single giant room. You've got to break it down into more of a cellular structure. Think smaller, self-sufficient groups, like squads or pods. This is how you foster deeper connections and, super importantly, it distributes the leadership. That way, your bus factor goes from 1 to, well, a lot more than 1.
Next up, you have to completely change your mindset about growth. Ditch that old linear funnel model and instead build a circular flywheel. Your goal isn't just to get more users. The goal is to make your current members so happy, so delighted that they become your best advocates. They become your most powerful engine for real sustainable growth.
And this next one, it's going to sound a little counterintuitive. You actually need to make it a little harder to join. Yeah, seriously. By adding some healthy friction, maybe an application process or making new members earn full access, you're basically building an immune system for your community. It filters out the low-effort users and the trolls, and it makes sure that the people who do join are actually invested in protecting the culture.
So when you boil it all down, this is the key takeaway. Most online communities don't die from a lack of growth. They die from indigestion. They die from unhealthy, unsustainable growth that completely destroys the culture that made them special in the first place. So the future, it doesn't belong to the biggest communities. It belongs to the most resilient, the most thoughtful, and ultimately, the most human ones.